Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to week 2 of our webinar series on AI in food and health. My name is Yamine Buzenbrek, Assistant Professor in AI within the Information Technology Group in Wageningen University. And I'm happy to host today's session. Thank you all for joining us. Today, we will explore how AI is transforming food safety. Our aim basically is to share insights, highlight real-world applications and examples as well, and leave plenty of room for discussion in the end. Here is today's agenda. We will begin with a presentation by Ákos, who will speak about the use of AI in food safety and for emerging risk identifications as well. Then Asli will present how iComply is using AI for predicting food safety. After both presentations, we will have plenty of time for discussion during the Q&A session. Before we start, a few practical notes. If you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat at any moment, and we will address them during the Q&A session at the end. Please note that this session is being recorded. The recording will be shared with the participant after the webinar. By staying with us, you consent to being included in the recording. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you find the presentations inspiring and informative. We will now begin with our first presentation. Our first speaker is Dr. Ákos Józwiak. He is the head of Food and Nutrition Science and AI in Siron Research Institute in Budapest, and the professor at the University of Veterinary Medicine in Budapest as well. Besides, he is the chair of the European Food Safety Authority Advisory Group on Data. Ákos, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours, and please feel free to share your slides.
Thank you very much, Yamine, for the nice introduction, and welcome everyone. Good afternoon. I'm trying to share my screen, and hopefully you can see it now. Just the confirmation, Yamine, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. So today I'm supposed to talk about AI and emerging risk identification, and I will do so. But I will start with the emerging risk identification part. So first of all, I think to understand some of the challenges what we have and some of the potential solutions what AI can provide, I think it's important to acknowledge that how complex our food systems are and how many different drivers influence it on a long term or on a shorter term. And this complexity is not only a terminology used by like everyday language, but it's a mathematical complexity coming with a lot of consequences, I think. And currently, when we approach this whole area of challenges, how to ensure future or current food safety, we face many problems. We don't know very much in details about many hazards, their true prevalences. There are always new hazards discovered. Also, very little information on some of the food components and food contaminants in not only in the prevalence, but also from a food component perspective, what exactly is in our foods on a molecular level and how all these different chemical substances interact with our body. Also, there is very little information about how different risk management interventions would influence the whole food systems behavior. So there are many, many, many challenges. And when it comes to decision making, it is really a complex process in terms of we need to manage our knowledge. We need to know what we know, and we need to identify what is unknown to us and to take steps to cover this gap. And when we discuss usually emerging risk identification or this evergreen desire to predict or anticipate the next big food systems issue, I like to talk about this in this diagram, which very simply depicts our knowledge and the meta-knowledge. So the knowledge about our knowledge in simplified terms. So we have 4 categories of our knowledge, and probably many of you already know these. And many of the approaches or many of the initiatives try to capture the unknown unknowns. So the things which we don't know that we don't know even, and they are very rare and they are could be related to the mathematical statistical term of black swans in many cases. So these are the events which are very rare but have huge consequences. So there is this desire that we want to anticipate this, but in fact, in most of the cases, we don't do that in reality because they are, I think, even theoretically impossible to predict. We can know about them post hoc when they happen. We can then, after the event, we can say that, okay, we could have anticipated that. But the reality is that there's so much noise and so much information out there that it's very, very, very hard or even impossible to predict this. So all of our efforts usually concentrate on the known unknowns and the unknown knowns. So these are the facts or information or data which we know that we don't know. This is one category. And the other one is the things which we knew or someone knows, but we don't know, or our institution doesn't know. And this is, I think, a very important part of our knowledge gaps and also informs us how to cover these. So when we talk about emerging risks in the food systems, usually we concentrate on these 2 in reality. And also, I think many of you know these terms of horizon scanning and early warning systems and all the others, but I still want to guide you through that usually the approach, what we apply in food system emerging risk identification or horizon scanning is that we try to operate on 3 distinct timelines. The first timeline is a short term. These are the events which are currently ongoing. So ongoing outbreaks, outgoing non-compliance detections. And for this, we need a very good and effective information spreading system, which informs all the decision makers, which might have stakes in the actual event. The other timeline is a medium timeline, which usually is called emerging risk identification, which is about things which are happening somewhere in the world. Someone identifies a new microbial strain, what could be mediated via food, or there is a new discovery of a chemical contaminant, or a new pathomechanism is discovered or described somewhere. It doesn't have immediate consequences on the food systems, but we could anticipate and we could evaluate these issues as probably interesting for the near future because they might escalate or they might pose a longer term risk for the consumers. And the third timeline is a really long timeline, years or decades, which are usually influenced by different drivers like climate change or socioeconomic drivers or political drivers. And these fall into the category or the exercises of foresight when we try to elaborate scenarios or different other tools or methodologies being used to anticipate what will happen on a longer time frame and how these influence the medium and the shorter time frame. So when we would like to harvest all this knowledge and we would like to use all these methodologies and somehow sort all this information data into a single system, we need to also kind of ask ourselves what is emergence and how we define emergence in that relation. And there are many definitions out there, but I like very much the definition coming from complexity sciences, which is emergence occurs when complex systems exhibit collective behaviors, properties, or patterns that arise from interactions. And this is something what I like very much, and this is also influencing our work, that exactly this is emergence. And I think it has 2 very important notions or characteristics. One is a time dynamic aspect. So it is a change over time. We need to acknowledge this, that something might be not emergent now, but might be emergent in the future, or vice versa. And also the important characteristics is novelty. So somehow an emergence should be a novel pattern or should be a new thing. But what is new is always context dependent. Something might be new for me, but not new for you because you already know. And also there are many actors out there. So this novelty approach and the context dependence of the novelty, I think it is very important to understanding what emergencies and what emerging risks might be. So this also means that emerging risks might be very different things to different players. Taking forward this idea or storyline, when we would like to grab this complexity and the changing patterns, the time dynamics, the novelty, computational science becomes very handy, because computational science is about detecting patterns with different computational tools. And exactly this environment of high noise, very low relevance, time dynamics involved, also interactions in a complex, mathematically complex system calls for computational science. So what we started to elaborate many years ago is different computational science or data analytic approaches to the question of emerging risk identification. And also, when we started to work with data and information and sorting all these and using different tools like network science, also natural language processing and others, we also need to realize that when we would like to capture this emergence, we could go in two directions. One way is to seek for information which somehow imitate the human decision-making process, meaning that we look for topics or look for issues which are new to us, but it's very hard to capture novelty in many ways from a text, but I will get back to this later. And the other approach is to become like semantic agnostic or text agnostic, and we just try to capture emergence in a complexity science terms, which means that if we approach a system as a network, for instance, with different network metrics, we could detect how a system changes, and if we could identify emergent patterns there. But this has also drawbacks, and most probably, and this is what we do or try to do, is to combine the two approaches to also capture emergence as a mathematical emergence or network emergence, but also to capture emergence or novelty in a semantic way with different tools. And I will not go into the details of all these tools, but during these recent years, together with exactly with Yamine, for instance, in some projects, but also with others across Europe, we have developed or we're part of developing different algorithms, tools for mining information from text mainly, or from networks, but all these networks are also representing text, in fact, to detect what would be new, what are the emerging patterns in food systems safety news or scientific publications or patent databases or any of these. But obviously, what I think is, and one important statement, that if we want to detect all the emergence of the food systems, we need to have this combined approach of looking at the short term, the medium term, the long term, also to understand all the drivers and how they influence or shape future food systems. So all these exercises are informing each other. And most probably just a purely data analytical approach is not enough in many ways. However, with the advances of AI and especially the generative AI, we could be more clever or more efficient in harvesting information. And this is like the second part of what I would like to tell you today is, obviously, there is this question now since 2 or 3 years, since generative AI tools, large language models became very good and very popular, that can we use AI for emerging risk identification? And there are parts which I would like to make a distinction. So all these predictive models, machine learning algorithms, which are founded on mechanistic understanding or predictions, this is a different word compared to what I'm supposed to tell you now. So when it comes to large language model generative AI, obviously there is this, again, the desire that you use these tools because they are very good in understanding and summarizing things, also very good in information collection and automation. So probably we could use AI for emerging risk identification. But the challenge is that probably the biggest challenge is that it's very hard for AI tools to contextualize the environment. So what is new? What is the novelty? Also, being systematic for large language models, this is not usually the case. And we have to somehow build into our solutions a systematic approach. Also, explainability of these tools or the somewhat biased training data sets behind the training of these tools might prevent us from really using them for emerging risk identification. However, what we also need to acknowledge that currently we are living in a time when we have a very strong synergy between three logarithmic growth curves. One is being computational power doubling every 2 years, which is, you may know as Moore's law, but also data doubling every 18 months or so. So the data availability, the majority of this data is unstructured data, and also AI capabilities doubling every 3 to 4 months now. And the intersection or the combination of these would mean that all these large language models, Gen AI tools, are becoming very, very good. And currently, depending on the domain, depending on the question, depending on the setting and prompting and many other factors, but you could build a tool which is as good as a PhD or a postdoc expert in some domains. And this is becoming promising in that case. And also we predict or anticipate that all these trends will continue to a degree, and we will have better and better tools. So when we think about AI, I would not go into the details mentioning what AI tools could be used in practice and how, but to acknowledge that with Gen AI and with AI, most probably we need to rethink our processes, how we think about science, how we do science, how we think about emerging risk identification, how we think about food safety. And one way of thinking about this is what we like to do is to think about AI in this data to decision pipeline. So there are data supposedly out there, or you could generate data for your scientific question for emerging risk identification. So you need to have some tools for discovering evidence and synthesize all the knowledge out there. Also, you need to have solutions to treat and manage all this data, what you harvest. Also, you need to have good analytics and modeling tools. And also you need to have a framework that how you derive insights, how you make decisions, how you make actions, how you learn from these. And in all of these, we could have currently a very, very good support of AI, like different evidence mapping tools or data discovery tools and early signal detection algorithms. Also, AI could help in data governance, data management, like with ontology mapping or metadata management. In analysis and modeling, obviously, predictive modeling, computational toxicology, quantitative risk assessment tools are using more and more AI. And in the decision-making framework, we could use AI in scenario building, prioritization, and visualization. So there are many, many tools out there. But it also means, and I just, brought an example here, asked ChatGPT about emerging microbiological food safety risks. And the answers are very good. There's nothing new in them. That's one of the problems. And when we would like to discover what is new, we need to go back into this data to decision pipeline and to understand that, okay, when we would like to make or use generative AI in discovering emerging risks, we need to provide evidences. We need to provide a framework how AI could harvest knowledge and context, how it could contextualize. Also, how we ensure systematic approach and proper data governance. Also, how we use explainable AI tools to really have fundamentally good basis for decisions. And also in case of decisions, we need to ensure humans in the loop, different validation pipelines to be ready to be used. And many of these aspects are currently missing. And I know that I'm heading towards my final slides, but I wanted to highlight maybe 3 aspects. When it comes to knowledge and context providing to AI, we need to understand, I think, a fundamental thing in using AI, that language models, these large language models are, as the name suggests, they are language models. They have a very strong understanding of the relation between different tokens in the text. It could predict the next best word, and the text is very good. However, all these tools are missing the reality part, the word model. They don't know anything about biochemistry or microbiology or chemical toxicology. And these parts of the reality should be also provided if we want to make scientifically sound decisions and predictions. We need to use and elaborate reality models grounded in scientific reality or truth, which would also mean that we still need to generate a lot of data, lab measurement data, observational data from the real world, because this is still missing a lot in our domain of food safety. Even though we say that it's an era of abundant data, it's still not true for food safety in many, many cases. The other thing what I wanted to mention, this is how to ensure to be systematic. And we borrow the pipeline of systematic literature reviews or evidence synthesis, but also with AI, this pipeline or workflow is changing. And now we don't have to follow the human brain capacities in deciding whether a data point, an information, a scientific resource is relevant or not, true or not, what is the quality of that. For that, we could use AI and large language models in a great part, but we need to ensure that these pipelines are still systematically applied, and also all the checks, human checks, which we need, are in place. And this is a tricky part and an important part. And the third thing what I wanted to highlight is the human in the loop. So when we want to use AI in decision-making or emerging risk identification, we need experts who also speak AI. We need experts who understand what the algorithms do, what are the limitations, what are the prerequisites, how we can make them better. And this is not necessarily a coding ability. It's more about AI literacy. And currently, what we see as a huge challenge in our domain, that food scientists or all the experts working in the food science domain, like veterinarians, biologists, chemists, and so on, they don't really have a formal training in AI literacy or data literacy. We all were taught in schools, in the universities on statistics, probably, and maybe some data science, but not about AI literacy. And it is very hard for me to imagine how the future food safety experts without any AI literacy would be able to use all these systems in a proper way. So this is like a call for more AI literacy, more education, more training on that. And what we envisage as a future or a consequence of using more and more AI in decision making or in evidence management or in emerging risk identification is different living evidence bases, knowledge graphs, and ever building and growing databases or data structures in relation to food safety ground truth or food ground truth, like food composition data, food consumption data, network medicine data, and all of that connected in a meaningful way. And this basic knowledge would provide the context to compare to which we could identify emerging issues, for instance, or predict emerging hazards, so to say. So, like, closing this short presentation very quickly, I think what we also need to face or acknowledge that I think currently we have this era that we try to use AI for science. So we try to speed up our processes, maybe derive some additional insights which we could not do before large language models. But what I want to stress or point to, that AI is so disruptive in many ways that we need to think about how we could use science for AI, how we should change our evidence and scientific processes to feed AI with better data, to really build up systems or pipelines which are fit by design for a good and explainable AI. And this is a slightly different way of thinking, I guess. And this is not a continuation of the previous data models and machine learning tools, what we developed. but a kind of a disruptive way to change our approach to what is first, science or AI, in many ways. So my last slide, what can we do to support this process? And I think the main message is sharing. So sharing tools, standards, data, models, good practices, education materials, or to educate in general, and to build partnerships between different domains, because interdisciplinarity is another key aspect of our food systems, which I think could really benefit from using AI, but for that we need these partnerships to be operational. Thank you very much, and I'm very, very open to your questions or comments.
Thank you very much, Ákos, for your insightful presentation. We move on now to our second presentation. Our second speaker, Asli Solmaz-Kaiser, please go ahead and share your slides. Asli is the CEO of iComply, an early warning system helping the food industry anticipate and prevent risks across global supply chains. With over 20 years of experience in product safety, she brings deep expertise in innovation, regulation, and consumer protection. Asli, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Yamine. So you said more than 20 years of experience, so that somehow told a little bit about my age. So I started at a very early stage. So it's, that's where the experience actually comes from. Just before I start, I would like to say a few things about myself, because I think our platform has a lot to do with, or how we apply AI, or our passion for solving problems actually has a lot to do with where we are coming from. I come from a corporate world, have worked in product safety for 14 years before I founded iComply. And at some point, actually, I felt that the technology was not really integrated in food safety or product safety in general, because per se, it is a more conservative environment. And yes, so in 2020, I left my corporate role and decided to take on this journey to utilize technology, advances in technology, to help food safety experts actually understand better the emerging or predicted risks, let me say. And yes, so that's what brought us here today. I'll give you a little bit of background on what the platform is actually doing. I think that was a great introduction from Akso, and because it was very very theoretical approach to horizon scanning and prediction and AI, and we're working with data. And what I will tell you is completely practical, how it is actually applied. So I think that was really a good, very good intro. So why we started actually with iComply is the increasing supply chain risks we see every day because of climate change, political instability, or even ethical compliance topics are things that are actually increasing the supply chain risks. And through manual research, it's simply impossible to actually be able to understand, analyze, monitor, and predict basically the data. So we have built the iComply system. It's an early warning system. It's a horizon scanning solution. And we identify the emerging risks in the food supply chain. And with the advances of generative AI, it's also possible right now also for people actually who do not like to use graphics or read graphics, or just looking for an additional interface, let me say, to chat with the data or create automated reports based on the data. And the objective is to significantly minimize recalls, food shortages, compliance risks, or any type of food fraud through the AI-powered platform. So this is the background or infrastructure, how it works. We have an end-to-end automated platform, meaning on a normal day, which luckily are pretty often. On a normal day, nobody touches our platform. On a normal day, data comes starts coming in around midnight. We take our data from 150,000 different data sources in multiple languages. All of this data will be differently processed. And finally, the reports will be sent out to the users based on their customizations. So it's end-to-end automated, and that's what was also mentioned previously. It's systematic, and now I will tell you what is happening between 00:00 to about 10:30 a.m. European time, where actually our users receive their reports. So we start here with the data extraction with 150,000 different data sources for different food safety risk indicators. We have this makes up to about 30,000 news a day in multiple languages. And this part is not much of an AI. So the whole system is actually a combination of AI and rule-based algorithms with of course with a more focus on AI. So where there is AI, it's written here. And then we have these let's say 30,000 news. Okay, so let's talk about the news first, also where they are coming from. We have incidents, recalls, border controls, etc., from different official bodies. We have the different newspapers, scientific journals, trade magazines. We have different test results, and we have about supplier information about 1 million suppliers. Okay, so the news are in there, right? Or the notifications authority body. And then that comes the data enrichment, because nobody wants to see 30,000 news. I mean, that's mostly probably irrelevant for the user, and it's even in different languages. So what our platform does is, of course, translation, but also categorizing the different news. Okay, this is about food safety, this is about food fraud, this is about future food safety or food fraud risks. This is about social compliance. This is about a supplier who is doing the illegal waste disposal, etc., etc. So all of these different news will be actually categorized. And then also depending on their importance, they will also be prioritized, like which one is likely to have the highest impact. And of course, then you take out all of the ingredients that are mentioned in the different news that come in. You tag all of the different risks that are mentioned. You tag all of the different companies that are mentioned. So all of this is happening at the background. And then from here, we are able to, because now we have analyzed the data, we are able to move on to the emerging risks. The emerging risks is where our algorithms identify what is unusual. Okay, another mycotoxin in nuts is not a very unusual thing. I mean, of course, nobody wants it to happen, but we already have our controls in place probably for that. But maybe a new pesticide in a certain, I don't know, in fruit, for instance, is maybe something new. Or let's say an increased number of notifications for a certain pesticide in different products, may be something new. So that is what the emerging risks are doing. So for our users, actually, we prepare weekly emerging risks list so that it is possible at all. I'm not saying easier. It is at all possible for them to be able to keep up with everything that's going on around the world regarding their raw materials that may require their attention. And then from there, we have with this we have done moment, we have captured the moment, right? What is happening. And then there is also the prediction part. So everything that has happened, what could this actually, what the prediction of this could be. And then this is also done by the AI algorithms, and then this can actually move on to the mitigation tactics. Through the chat functionality, the customers can actually, the users can identify better the risks and also ask for mitigation tactics. And of course, there is also the possibility to let AI report on everything that is already there, and you can basically, the users can copy and paste this or just advance it the way they see is needed. Okay, so actually I skipped many slides, so I will go from here just very shortly because we have some. Yamine, how much time do we have? I still have 10 minutes, is that right?
You still have time. We think you can go even 10 minutes.
Okay, so I'll then show a few more slides. Wait. So when we look at, I told you that we are actually, when we get the news, we put in different categories. So the different categories that we are actually looking at are like climate change, supplier risk, economical factors, modern slavery, pests and diseases, animal welfare, and geophysical events. Okay, so I will actually go here, pesticide risk prediction, because we are talking about AI. So in our pesticide risk prediction, what we do, and this is not the generative AI part, but the machine learning part, let's say, we predict which new pesticides may appear on which raw materials. So we discussed previously which actually known unknowns, known unknowns, unknown unknowns, known knowns, and this is what we are actually trying to do with this, or our objective with this algorithm is identify which pesticides may appear on which ingredients. But important is we are looking only for the pesticides that are not publicly known to exist on a certain raw material. So something that has not been identified before. So if, I don't know, chlorpyrifos was on oranges already 400 times, this was not going to be a part of our prediction. But only if it's a new pesticide in a new raw material, that's how it actually becomes a part of our prediction. And I will show you a short screenshot of that. And so after we implemented this, we realized that it was still not so easy for our users to understand, because, or to apply it, let me say, because there are just so many pesticides. And so we actually automated the gap analysis, which means that there is a certain number of pesticides that users are already looking at. And we compare that with what has already been identified or predicted. And only if there is a gap, again, this is done by the AI as well, only if there is a gap, the user receives a notification. So it's also very important here that whatever you do, you are using any type of algorithms, data, it should be, the results should be somehow practical and practically applicable. Otherwise, all the things you are doing, will probably be forgotten pretty fast. So this is how the pesticide risk prediction, a few examples where it was working. So really the prediction says, okay, apples from Egypt, lemons from Iran, these are the pesticides that are going to be coming. And then you can see when it has really, it has really happened, meaning known publicly. And so I will actually go to the food fraud risk prediction, because I think this is a very cool one. So we have the Many times food fraud risk, we say, oh, food fraud, it's so hard to predict. We never know when it's going to come. It always becomes so creative, you know, whenever there is a economical gain, there may be always fraud. And there are different numbers saying, okay, 1% of all the food out there is actually fraudulent. We just don't know it. Okay, so how does our food fraud risk prediction work? We look at indicators like weather, plant diseases, pesticides, price changes, and these are the actually factors that are triggers of food fraud. And whenever for your raw materials, any of these incidents are identified or flagged, this means that there is a possibility of upcoming fraud. And yeah, so that's basically how it works. And we have seen a nice example in the case of, this is oranges, beetle nuts, but I like the one of hazelnuts. You may have heard that this year actually there was a harvest loss of hazelnuts coming from Turkey. You could see it actually already being flagged as a risk in February this year for hazelnuts, that there's going to be frost and that there's going to be a loss for hazelnuts, a harvest. And then you could see that it actually continued, this problematic continued. And in October, there was an increased number of notifications for mycotoxins. So you may think, okay, mycotoxins is not necessarily fraud. Well, it may be fraud if it is a quality downgrade because of the shortage of the products. So this is a very common thing, to combine it with actually lower grade products. So this, so sometimes it is called, let me say, it is called food fraud. However, the impact is on food safety. Just to sum up, what you can see, so this is also how the food fraud risk prediction look like. You can see the countries, you can see which raw materials actually are the highest, which have the highest percentage of anomalies, let's say. The pesticide risk prediction that reveals gaps between your testing as well as the predicted substances. And of course, the very nice and friendly AI assistant that tells you, and this data is coming from our platform, but you can also tell it to take it from internet as well. So it can combine the data, which I think makes it very user-friendly. And what I really like doing is, for instance, it takes the data from our platform, and then I say, okay, there is always a lot of data and they are relevant to my products. For instance, I say, okay, which one is the most important for you? And then you get a different perspective into, okay, another person or AI is looking at the data and it's telling you what is important and why. Now you have your own mind, but it's always nice to combine and get this different perspective in a relatively relaxed atmosphere, let me say, and you can decide to take it or leave it. So for our platform, we have, so the AI is processing actually daily information over 1 million suppliers, 425 million test results, 450,000 warnings, 150,000 data sources with about 25 to 30,000 news daily, worldwide. And yes, for sure, all of this would not have been possible without AI and even without Gen AI. We have started adopting it very, very early because we had we were launching some new products and it was actually pretty difficult to do some of the things. And we were thinking, okay, how you do it? It was good, but it wasn't that good. And then, Gen AI was very useful, and it changed a lot, actually, the performance of our platform, integrating it. Yes, so I think I will stop here.
Yes, Asli, thank you so much for your insightful presentation. We go now to the questions. Any questions for, I will share a slide here first. Any questions from our you see any questions or not yet?
So Yamine, while
Yeah,
the
please.
questions are coming, I actually wanted to say something else as well.
Yeah, please, Asli and Ákos as well, if you have questions, just ask them to each other. In the meantime, I have also some questions I can ask. Go, Asli, first then.
Okay. So many times I'll ask, okay, what is your experience? What do you want to share with us? From your personal experience of, from founding of iComply to making it a preferred platform in the industry. So in implementation of AI, so I have written these down. The first thing is do your research. We have extremely good researchers like Yamine here or Ákos, who have already actually done a lot of work and provided a lot of guidance to the industry. So rather than starting from zero, just do your research and understand where actually the current research is, so you don't have to, try to reinvent the wheel. Cross-functional teams, building cross-functional teams with domain experts, with technical knowledge, as well as with business side is very, very important because, all these three functions are extremely important in building an AI product or algorithm. A third one is aiming for the result, not for technology, because maybe you want to do something with AI, but maybe the result is not necessarily an AI product. So then, I think just relax and do it without the AI, because important is that you are being helped. And the last one is that know your budget. These things can be very expensive if you are not target oriented, and it may not go anywhere at the end. So if you know your budget, you know your constraints overall. If you have a time constraint, it's the same thing. And from day one, work according to the plan, according to that. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Asli. You answered already some of my questions now. Ákos, do you have a question for Asli or the other way around?
There is already a question in the chat, so I would not take the time with my question.
You can take it, Ákos or Asli. For who is this? Test results. What is the source of the test result used by the solution? Are they from official or commercial labs?
They are from official labs.
Okay, then I will continue then asking about that question. When you say have data from official labs and as well from suppliers or companies or whatever, and Ákos in his presentation are also like he ended with collaboration and sharing information. How did you manage to get? What is the key of getting that information from different suppliers?
It is public information. We don't have any information directly from actually anybody. It's all public information.
Everything is public. Basically,
Everything
there's
is public.
no industrial or company-wise data.
No.
Okay. Of course, then I have a question. You started your presentation with a nice discussion about the unknown unknowns, and you know how many times we discussed about that. Can you explain to us or enlighten us basically how the authorities like EFSA and all the authorities around the world are handling them now? They are a big part from the emerging part,
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. I think the authorities currently, like including EFSA, but also FAO, WHO, and many national authorities, they do have some sort of solutions for emerging risk identification, but they are very different or varying across the board. So there are countries who have their own emerging risk identification tools and also stakeholder boards, and they spend a lot of resources on understanding the emerging risks. EFSA also does that. but other countries, they don't do that, and they don't use anything. So there are, I think, big differences, and maybe that's not a big problem, but I think that we need to see that there is no single tool, no single methodology. There are different approaches, but they are doing that and taking care of that. So I think that's a good sign. What I would again reiterate a bit, not too much, but still, how accessibility to data and information through generative AI will change this landscape. That's a good question, and we don't know yet. We had a collaboration with FAO. They published a report on how to do horizon scanning. What are the basic principles of good horizon scanning practices, including AI? So that this was like a first step to include in an international guidance-like document that how to approach AI and how to utilize the power of AI. But I think it will be still changing in the future.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We have two questions in the Q&A session. The first one is for you, Ákos. You can check it there. And the second one is for you, Asli. You can prepare yourself as well. Go ahead, Ákos.
Yeah, so I think there are many approaches should be used, and this is a portfolio or a combination of different tools. So I still strongly believe in like academic or higher education training. So like the foundations of AI or basic AI literacy, data literacy should be taught at universities for food scientists as well. So this is like one layer of that. The other one would be even before that in primary and secondary schools, better data literacy or understanding basic statistics. So probably this is the point where we should start. I know that it's not realistic in many countries, but still, I think there are problems across many countries in how we teach mathematics, for instance, in primary schools. But anyway, and the other layer would be shorter trainings, open courses, infographics, visuals, short videos, anything what would improve the understanding of what are different large language models, for instance, how they could be utilized, what are the rules of these. So I think different combinations, workshops, shorter, longer courses as well. We, as a part of a collaboration, European collaboration, we mapped many of the risk assessment courses across Europe. And also we faced in that exercise that there is a demand and also an unmet demand of AI and data literacy across food safety risk assessment curricula in higher education, and probably international collaboration, talking a lot in every forum or in each occasion about that would improve this situation. But shorter, longer, all could come. I think it's very context and project dependent. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ákos. Asli, there's a second part of the question is for you.
Yes, so data, it says, so the data coming from all the sources is not originally structured when it is gathered. That's completely right. And then it continues, but I need some more clarification actually to the second question. Is there a structure that iComply requests to the companies? So this part, actually, I'm not so clear. Maybe Beatrice can unmute herself and maybe just if you could tell it or just write it, or I explain as I can.
I think just explain it as you can now. Yeah.
Yes. So actually, these data are not coming from companies. They are coming from public sources. So we do not ask anybody to change their data structure. Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't do it anyway, but we also don't ask them to change it. It is our job, basically our platform. We restructure it, we identify it, we bring it to our own data structure, let me say. And that's on us. And when we are working with companies who are, for instance, our customers, they may need the data structured differently. then we do it for them. We can also change the structure based on the company.
Thank you, Asli. Ákos, another question to you. You mentioned the problem of data sharing and the quality of data in food safety, which is a big issue. And one of the solutions you said is sharing, collaboration, interdisciplinary. And you know how hard is it in practice? How do you think we can achieve that? Do you have some tips for us?
Yeah, this is big challenges which always end up in just citing principles or answering them in broad terms. So still, I think partnerships, collaborations in different research projects, that's one way of doing this. The other way is I think for many years or decades, harmonization and standardization was a keyword, that we need to harmonize, standardize our data models, data terminologies, all of that. But currently, we don't see this as a viable option in many ways. But instead of that, some sort of an ecosystem approach is needed, which means that the data stay where they are, but we need to combine them for a fit for purpose, or in a meaningful way, in a project-based or a tailor-made way, when we want to ask and answer a scientific question. But then we face the problem of these different terminologies and standards and ontologies. And what is a promise of AI, that we could use many of the large language models in specific settings to translate between ontologies or to translate between terminologies and make this ecosystem approach more viable or feasible. We are still not there yet. So there are ongoing discussions on food data spaces in Europe, or whether should we or should not have food data space. There is an agri data space building up, a health data space being built up by the European Commission and different initiatives, but also it would apply kind of to food as well. But we are quite far away from that. So I think a lot of detailed, small, continuous work is needed, which is not a very sexy answer, but still we need to put a lot of effort in collaboration, partnerships, and sharing, and using AI for merging data sets, for instance. And this is probably the way to go, and not try to harmonize everything.
Thank you so much, Ákos. I see the time is already there. And the last question to Asli then, what are your next steps? Oh, there is a question, sorry, here. I am curious about which mitigation measures are recommended for emerging risk and how their effectiveness is assessed. For you, Asli.
Yeah. So mitigation measures depends on the emerging risk type. So, so if it is, for instance, if it's a new pesticide, it can be something to include in your random sampling. If it is a salmonella for a, I don't know, for a certain raw material, I don't know, spice or so, you're using again to increase random sampling for those products. For food fraud, there are completely different tactics based on the type of food fraud actually you're expecting, from visual assessment to testing on dyes to starch identification through various methods. So it is actually very different, very good question, and it's very much dependent on what you're actually doing. You know, the effectiveness, assessing the effectiveness of risk mitigation is pretty difficult, because if it is not there, it's good, but you don't know if it would otherwise have been there. And so I think this is this is not so easy. Of course, when you do a test, maybe you realize that actually you captured something that is otherwise would have been there. So that would be one way of effectiveness. But just because you did not catch it does not mean it's not there. Maybe it didn't enter your supply chain. So being careful, being precautious, and sleeping good at night then.
Thank you so much, Asli. Thank you, Ákos and Asli, again for your time, your insightful presentation. Much appreciated. Thank you for all our participants. as the year comes to an end, we wish you a joyful festive season and a wonderful start to the new year. Thank you so much. Have a nice end of the day.
Thank you, Yamine. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.